Welcome to this published author's interview. My name is Kenneth Muyingo, and with me I have a special guest that I'm going to be having an interview with. First, I just want to mention, if you watch this interview and you would like to write a book yourself and become an author, there is a link with the interview. Just click on the link and join the group, become an author, and write your first book to connect with like-minded people who are doing the same. With that said, I would like to get into the interview by asking my guest to say hello to our viewers and listeners and to introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Kennedy. I'm over here in Georgia, the United States, specifically Grovetown. It's a hot sunny day here. It's probably around 95 degrees, but you know.
It's a rainy day here in the Netherlands. It's been very wet. But they say that the weather in the Netherlands, a typical Dutch day, is wet and cold. So nice that you have some sunshine over there. Please send us some whenever you can.
You can have it all.
Awesome, thank you. So tell us about yourself. If somebody is watching this interview and they would like to know more about Tyler, what would you tell them?
So I'm in the Air Force. I've been in for 9 years, this past June actually. I do computer networking, so I'm the one that sets up the internet for everyone, and basically for the service right now, I set the internet for them, but that's my specialty, is maintaining computers and technical stuff like that. Yeah, that's like the big thing is I'm in the Air Force, and now of course I'm an author. That's what I've been kind of pursuing my whole life, is just writing and creating all kinds of content, from stop motion animation to video games, things like that. I've always been a storyteller, and now I've really found the medium which I can do that, which is writing. I've always loved to read. So that's kind of
amazing. So you are in the Air Force. That's massive. It's and you do all the computers. So amazing. That must be quite fulfilling. And you've been doing this for 9 years.
Yes, it's
a
best opportunity. Like, I can't believe, when I decided to join, I was just graduated high school, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I waited like a year to kind of make a decision, and the Air Force was just like a calling to me. So I joined, and it's been the most amazing opportunity. I've traveled the world. I even went to the Netherlands for a couple of days, traveled all around and everything. So I got to see from Japan to Korea to the other end of the world, of Europe. So I've got to see everything in between. So it's just been very wonderful.
Wow, quite amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And the profile of your profile, the part of your profile that I wanted to zero in on is the author aspect of this interview. You have written some books. Can you tell us about your most recent book first?
So my most recent book is called The Clock Towers. It's a novelette of sleeping through time. It's about a guy who, when he falls asleep, he travels through time. He has no control over it, so he never gets to experience his own life because he's always experiencing someone else's life. So he'll wake up and he's in a different body of someone else in a different time period.
Wow. And it's called The Clock Towers?
Yes.
Wow. Amazing. And so how many books have you published in total?
So now there's a total of 3 right now. I'm working on my actual debut novel. Hopefully it'll be out by like November. And that one is called Dr. Cancer. And that's about a doctor who discovers he has the ability to cure cancer by touching his patients and taking it away. But what he doesn't realize is that when he takes it away, the cancer becomes a part of him. So that's kind of the battle along the way, is that he's curing people, but then he finds out that by doing so, he kills himself.
Wow. That's quite a story. Quite a story. And then, so the most recent book is The Clock Towers. And then what about your first book? Tell me about that one. Yes.
It was it's called Life with No Belly Button, the story of the wordsmith. And that's kind of like my wife did her beauty form, which was her life story. This is my life story, because I don't have a belly button. So it's kind of my perspective of how I was born and how I had all these medical problems that led to me not having a belly button. And then it's also a bunch of my storytelling told through poems that I kind of weave out throughout the book, telling my life story, because I give a little background after every poem, but I also then write some very fantasy stories. So it's kind of like my inspirations from life, but also my life story. So it's like a memoir, a poetry collection. It's kind of like everything all at once.
Yeah.
It's called Life with No Belly Button, and it was my very first book that I started when the quarantine all started. I had the idea of like I could be an author here, so I spent like about 15 days doing 20-hour days of just nothing but writing, designing, and putting everything together. And then, it was just my very first book
Wow.
and something I was very passionate about.
Life with No Belly Button, and this is your life story.
Yes.
Wow, that's quite unique and quite a journey also as well. Thank you so much for sharing this. And when you think back on this, or when you look back on this journey, maybe there was a time that you could have thought, no, that's not for me, or writing a book is not something I've thought about. But I'm curious, sometimes they say there's a point that something happens, sort of like a tipping point, and then you're like, I just have to do this. Tell me, what inspired you to write this book?
So I've always written stories and poems. Like I've always been a poet ever since I was a little kid. So I've always dreamed of publishing a book. But back in the 90s, the only way you were publishing a book was if someone picked you up. So
Exactly.
good luck at that. So when the quarantine started, I was actually I picked up I opened a Word document and I saw something that said poetry pamphlet, and I was like, something just sparked in me. I was like, I wonder if you can publish a book yourself. So I did a little bit of research and I found out you can publish on Amazon and all those other slew of places to publish. And I was like, I could actually do this. And it was the beginning of quarantine. So I was like, this is like kind of meant to be. I have all this time to just write, learn, go do it. So that's what I did. I just I took a couple of poems that I had written about, 5 years ago. And I was like, well, that's a starting point. And from there, it ballooned from like 5 poems to over like 35, 40 poems or something like that. And then I decided like I'll put in the background information and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like, I could do this. So once I realized I didn't have to wait for a publisher, and probably wouldn't publish my book because it's a poetry and memoir. So it's not something that's normally mass marketable or something. I was like, well, this is it. And then that's what I ended up doing. And from there, I just learned, wow, I can actually become an author and people can read my things and I don't have to wait anymore. I can just keep writing and, putting books out there.
You don't need anyone's approval to write, to publish your own material. Wow, this is amazing. And when I listen to the story, it's quite captivating. Life with No Belly Button, even the title of the book itself. I'm curious, was there a struggle when you thought about choosing the topic for the book? How did you choose the topic for the book?
I chose it because the big thing about me is like, well, not the biggest thing, but just one of the most unique things about me is I don't have a belly button, and it's not like you can see a scar or anything like that. It's just perfect skin. Like if you ever see the show Kyle XY, it's literally like that. There's no scar. It's just pure skin. That's kind of how I lived my whole life. So it was just like my unique perspective, and that's kind of one of my story to be about, was my unique perspective on life. Because I think there's only a handful of people in the world that don't have like a belly button or anything like that. So I've never experienced that part of life. Just like I can't move my right eye right, I've experienced, I experience things differently than other people just because the things I was born with or the medical troubles I have. So when I was thinking about the title, I was like, well, what's my life story? Because I didn't want to be like, this is the Tyler Kennedy story or something like that. What would be the unique thing that would tie everything together? And I was like, life with no belly button, because how many people have that kind of story. So I was like, that's perfect.
I have never spoken to anyone in my life who did not have a belly button. So it's wow, it's quite unique. It's and I think you did well in choosing that, because then all of a sudden, if I'm looking at books and I see this, I'm like, wait, I gotta find out more about this. Wow. And so your first book, Life with No Belly Button, and then The Clock Tower.
So between that, it was the Rose Wish. That was like the little book I put out in between. It's just it's a book of poems.
Tell me
So
about that one.
it tells the story of a man who starts out loving a girl, and they both kind of fall in love, and it's a beautiful kind of love. But then it slowly turns out that like she cheats on him, and so he gets angry and he turns into the dark part of the human nature, which is like jealousy and all that stuff. So you watch his descent into madness, and that's kind of what the whole poems are about, is like this story of them, and then his descent into madness for not able to control himself, and he falls into the dark paths that people can fall into when they get angry or upset or hurt. That's what
Yeah.
that story. It's called the
Wow.
Rose, and I use the theme
The
of
rose?
roses. Yeah, I use the theme of roses to tell every poem. So every poem has a different kind of color, or basically a different kind of type of rose, or a different type of take on rose to tell the poem. So I was like, that'd be a really cool thing to string them all along.
Wow. It's quite a unique one as well, indeed. And so 3 books already, Ty. That's quite impressive. And when you think about this, do you consider yourself as a naturally talented writer, or would you say that writing is a skill that you have developed over time?
I say it's both, because I've written, my entire life. So when I was a kid, I was trying to draw comic books. I can't draw, but I'd be trying to tell stories through comic books, and I do short stories, and poetry has just been something that, not that it's easy, but it's been coming natural to me. It's a natural kind of, like in school, people would struggle with trying to tell a poem, and I'd be like, well, here we go. And they'd be like, my teachers would be like, wow, that's really good. And it's not because it's easy for me. It's just something that I naturally understand on how to use my written words to tell a story, to convey some kind of emotion and stuff. It's something I still have to practice all the time. Like I've started like 5 different novels, and I've gotten a quarter of the way through, and I'm like, this is not working. This is terrible. But they're kind of practice. Every time I start a novel, even if I don't finish it, it's just my practice to get better at writing. So it's natural, but I still have to work at it. Like I'm not, you're turning out masterpieces left and right. It's still just a lot of work, but it does come, I think it comes more natural to me than some other people who have to, like, I don't know how to use my words or whatever. Storytelling, I guess, is probably the most natural thing to me. Not necessarily the writing, just be able to tell a story and get to people's emotions.
Yeah. So the storytelling aspect is the one that was natural to you, and then you found this medium of being able to express your stories through writing, and then there was a spark that just made something huge out of it. Wow, that's and 3 books. And I'm thinking, first you mentioned about the story of life with no belly button. That's I mean, I don't think it gets more unique. I don't think life's journey can get more unique than that. But I'm curious, what would you tell me is the one thing that has happened to you personally that has had the greatest impact on you writing books? Because you have published 3 books already.
I'd say the biggest impact would have to be, I think, meeting my wife, because she's been such a huge inspiration to me, and just in all life in general, because, her being autistic and having all these mental problems that she deals with, I see how she can, despite that, she's still going out there. She was still wanting to write. She was, she wasn't letting that stop her. And I myself suffer from OCD and anxiety. So seeing her, be able to do these things was like, together we support each other. So when I started this, we kind of started writing together, because I was like, babe, we can do this. We can put books up there. And she was like, so together we kind of just supported each other. So along the entire way, we're supporting each other. We're, even on the bad days when we're having struggle writing or our books aren't selling, we're still there for each other, and we're still doing something together that kind of inspires us every day. So much so that we decided, and we have started a publishing company, so that way we can start to publish our books under those. And then eventually, once we get the whole process down in about a year or so, we want to have other people come along so we can help them publish and market. That way they don't have to go through the challenges that we do, which is trying to be a self-published author. You're like, well, I got to market, I got to design, I got to keywords, description,
Yeah.
You have to research. So I was like, we start this for ourselves, but hopefully our plan is to, in a year or two, is to start taking a couple people on and help them, guide them through the self-publishing process and kind of give them the tips of the trade, or do some things that they may not be great at, designs of books or formatting, things like that, help them along the way with that.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, indeed. Well, thank you so much. And I I think I mentioned it also when I did Hannah's interview. It does go a long way in having partners that are supportive. There's something I've understood. I had somebody told me once. They said, if you want to go fast, just go alone. But if you want to go far, you need to find good company to journey with.
Yes.
And I think a good life partner or good spouse is ideal as far as making this happen. So thank you so much for supporting Hannah, because she mentioned this in our interview. But also thank you to Hannah for being there for you, because it's where I come from. There's a saying, they say it's one hand cannot wash itself. It is one hand that washes another. We need each other, and this is really amazing. And this is quite insightful, Ty. Thank you so much. And so you have already published 3 books. Are you currently working on book number 4? You mentioned it earlier, but can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, so the story comes from the idea because my grandpa right now has stage 4 lung cancer. And so it comes from that that emotion of, I wish I could take away his pain, because right now, you know, he just got rushed to the ER yesterday because the cancer they found out has spread to his lower regions, his pelvis, and all that kind of stuff. So he was in a lot of pain, and you know, the pain just doesn't go away; it's just in his whole body. So I came up with the word Dr. Cancer popped in my mind, and then I was thinking, like, I wish I could take away his pain. Like, I wish I could just end it. And that's kind of where the idea of the story came from. Was like, what if there was a doctor that could? What if all he had to do was touch him and take the pain away? So that's where I had the idea of trying to find a way to take away my grandpa's pain, even if I couldn't. At least I could write about a story about, I think, what everyone would relate to, of, you know, someone's going through cancer that they love or care about, and watching them suffer. And if they had a doctor that could just touch them and then the pain's gone away, that's where I got that idea. And I'm kind of writing it in dedication to him, because he might have like a month, maybe 2 or 3 left. And so I wanted to write something that, you know, would always be in his memory, something that I always did for him. So even when he passes, there's a token of memory for him. There's something people can read, and it's inspired because of him, because he's inspired me in my life. So it's a way to just memorize and kind of get everyone else out there who can relate to losing someone to a terrible thing like cancer, or anything really, but specifically cancer.
Indeed. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's very personal indeed. And I just want to take this opportunity to wish you and your whole family lots of strength.
Thank you.
Because it's it must be a tough and trying time for you. And also, I cannot even start to imagine the kind of pain that he's going through, and strength for him as well. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Ty. And this was very inspiring, and I'm so glad that we were able to do it. And I'm just wondering, if somebody's watching this interview and they would like to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
So I have a website. It's called mcloudauthor.com, and name. And then you can go find the same thing on Facebook, mcloudauthor. You'll find me on there. And of course, I'm on Amazon. You can just look for my book names or mcloud, and it'll pop up with a whole list of all my books. Those are the 3 main ways you're going to find me right now. Of course, we have our publishing company, so that'll be another kind of avenue to find us later on.
Amazing. And where can people buy your books? You mentioned that they're online?
They're on Amazon. If you live in Georgia, they're in the local bookstores too, but otherwise.
Very nice. Wow, thank you so much, Ty. We will put the links to how people can connect with you and to the books with the interview, so that people can access that information whenever they would like to. I'm just wondering, is there anything else that you would like to share before we end the interview?
I would say to anyone out there that wants to write a book, it can be scary, but the one thing I've learned from writing all these, or even starting novels and I'm only getting a quarter way through, that it's not hard to finish. It's just scary to finish, because once you finish the book, that's when the real work begins, because now you got to market, now you got to do the book covers, the design of everything. That's where all the little things that as an author you may not be wanting to do. You might just want to write books, and that's the easy part of love storytelling. So I'd say don't be intimidated, because finishing the book's easy, but that everything else afterwards, that's where you're going to have struggles. But that's the point where you have to realize you can't give up, because you can't stop, because your dream is here. It lives really here. The book, that you write, that's something that you as an author can do. But everything else after that might be the most discouraging thing, because I know after trying to market my books, I'm like, this is really, really hard. Like, writing was way fun. This is not. But I would say don't give up, because you will find success. I've already had people order my book, and random strangers order my book. It may not be in the thousands, but just having anyone pick up your book and enjoy it it's very rewarding, and it does take time. So I'd say don't give up, because as long as you put your effort into it and you continue, it may take 3 months, it may take a year for someone to really get off with your book, but it's a long-term play. It's not like the traditional publishing method where they market your book and all of a sudden people are buying it. The dream isn't that. It's long, arduous time of just constantly learning how to market and get better at that aspect. So don't give up.
Indeed. Wow, thank you so much, Ty. This was very inspiring and very insightful. I'm so glad we were able to do it.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been awesome. You're awesome.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, and you too are awesome.